Hello everybody and welcome to the Dead by Daylight Chapter 11 Demise of the Faithful lore reading. Today we'll be covering the lore behind the Plague, Jane Romero, and the Temple of Purgation. If you wish to catch up on Dead by Daylight lore series, follow the link in the description for the full playlist. With that out of the way, let's begin. Survivor name, Jane Romero. Female influential celebrity. Jane Romero was the daughter of famous actress Loretta Lawrence, of whom she had no memory. Her parents had separated when she was still a baby, mainly since her mother was often away filming. Jane was raised by her father, a struggling visual artist. She grew up torn between resenting her mother's absence from her life and admiring her presence on screen. As a teenager, Jane secretly wished to emulate her mother's talent. She would direct and perform in plays, audition for TV commercials, and help her father at his studio. During her senior year, she entered a national oratory contest and won first prize. Her performance attracted the attention of a radio station that contacted her for an interview. During the live show, her natural charm and repartee impressed the staff, who offered her a part-time job at the station. After graduating college in communication, she quit her job at the station to work for a trendy variety show, but her frank delivery and ad-libs were not appreciated by the show's executives, who fired her after 5 months. Desperate for another opportunity, Jane pitched a show at the radio station she used to work at, only to be turned down, her proposal being too risky. 4 months later, she received a phone call from a producer who had seen reruns of the show. He was looking for a co-host to spark up the failing show Quick Talk. Live television meant long hours, a low salary, and no stability, but it also offered a platform to broadcast her views. She disputed the crude, inflammatory tone of Quick Talk and pushed for relatable coverage of personal issues. Her honest delivery resonated with her audience, and within weeks the show's viewership was steadily growing. After 2 years, she launched a full-hour segment called The Jane Romero Show, which was broadcast nationally and covered taboo topics, including her personal struggle with abandonment. Her show broke records, and her initials JR became synonymous with products ranging from beauty creams to fashion accessories. But Jane needed more. She wanted others to follow her in her footsteps. She published a memoir that covered her childhood with an absent mother. Her book was an instant bestseller, but was reviewed harshly. Critics called it a serving of sad anecdotes, seasoned with the bland, generic self-help tips. Jane took this criticism to heart, since despite her success, a voice in the back of her mind was starting to doubt her achievements. Her success also generated an increasingly demanding schedule and a growing pressure to entertain constantly. During a particularly tense week, she canned an episode and instead launched a 2-hour-long special on divorce. Her stress peaked when she learned that her mother had agreed to star in her show. Jane put on a brave face and began the show. Most of it went without a hitch, but her mother walked on set, smiling warmly at the audience. Jane's stomach lurched unpleasantly. She was consumed by a violent envy that had been festering, yet she carried on with a strained smile until Loretta interrupted her, saying that they were not actually related. The interview went haywire after that. After the show, Jane was driving to her father's house in New Jersey. She needed to talk things over with him. She had not been feeling like herself lately. She turned on a freeway along the coast to avoid major congestion and popped some painkillers to numb the throbbing pain in her temples, which had been nagging her all day. Then she started to relax and turned on the radio. Classical music was playing. The drive was slow. Black ice covered the highway, which was packed with cars on their way back home. Night fell. A darkness began to blur the corners of her vision and turn the headlights into swirls of red. Jane blinked to sharpen their outlines, but each time she closed her eyes, her eyelids became heavier and heavier, until they remained shut for a moment too long. The following morning, authorities were fishing out Jane's car from the water. Despite leading a meticulous search for weeks, they were unable to retrieve her body. The airing and production of the Jane Romero show was suspended until after her funeral, which both her father and mother attended. As the public grieved for Jane, there was a surge of orders for JR products, and all her episodes were re-released a month later, with an opening credit that wished her eternal peace. Killer name: Dearest, High Priestess of Babylon. Codename: The Plague. Female Babylonian. Realm: Red Forest. Power: Vile Purge. When she was 5 years old, Dearest, the youngest of a family of 7, was left on the brick-red burning steps of the Temple of Purgation at the center of Babylon. To process her shock and sorrow, she held onto the belief that the gods had a plan for her. Her new life was one of quiet servitude. She would tend to the gardens, prepare ceremonial meals, and polish ceremonial incense burners. At night, she would pray for a sign that would reveal her purpose. When she came of age, she attended the high-ranking priests during the yearly worshipping of the sea-goat, the god of water and creation. Swinging a censer down the great hypostyle hall, she cast thick black fumes that reached the cold towering stone pillars before dissipating. Her worries lifted, and the resulting bliss made her feel closer to the gods than ever. She worked herself to the bone each day that followed, fulfilling her duties while taking on new ones, as she aided the priests during purification rituals. The priests were more and more in need of assistance. Cleansings were being performed daily to answer the demand from outside the high temple walls, where a catastrophic plague had resurfaced. Within months, the priests contracted the disease. It did not take long before they became too weak to perform any kind of ritual. Dearest, having assisted many purification rituals, was the only one able to carry on. The swelling panic had been contained, even if by a novice. Anxious before her first ceremony, Dearest visited the priest's sanctuary chamber. When she lit the candles, she noticed a narrow opening at the back. Sliding through the gap, she reached a crypt hidden under the sanctuary. The chamber was bare, except for the golden statue of a woman who stood with outstretched hands, her fingers covered in jewels. It was the sign Dearest had been waiting for. The great hall was packed with followers who bowed down as Dearest entered. She strode to the brick altar and grabbed a ceremonial dagger forged in silver, her ruby-ringed fingers wrapping around the blade like claws. The sudden display of luxury intrigued the followers, who were struck already by her youth and beauty. As she began reciting the epic of creation, a woman at the back swooned and collapsed. Dearest rushed to her and noticed the black blisters covering her feet. Without hesitation, Dearest grabbed her sacred blade and swung it at her own foot, severing a toe. Then she offered the bloody part to the gods, asking them to protect the woman. A silence fell over the followers, who revered Dearest as their new priestess. Tales of her wealth, beauty, and devotion began to spread across the city as quickly as the disease. Soon, Dearest's followers called her the High Priestess of Babylon. But her faith was tried when she showed the first signs of infection. Her cough became a mix of phlegm and blood, her neck erupted in abscesses, and her four-toed foot darkened. Ashamed of her condition, she began wearing a veiled headpiece and carried a censer that masked the rancid smell of sick that clung to her skin. Hoping to be saved, she kept performing the rituals, offering blessed water and food to her followers. But no ritual could save her. In a desperate attempt to appease the gods, Dearest banished herself from the city. She traveled north with a few followers, venturing through the cold woodlands of Urashtu until it was no longer possible to walk. They camped in a damp cave where Dearest lay in a pool of vomit. Her foot, which had turned black, was so swollen she could not go any further. Her followers and she realized the truth in that cave. They were all infected with the plague. Kneeling among her retching followers, Dearest made one last prayer. The black fumes of incense rose into the damp air before being wiped off by a cold breeze. Neither the body of Dearest nor those of her followers were ever found. Many told tales of her return, but no one truly knew what fate had befallen the High Priestess of Babylon. The Temple of Purgation, the half-forgotten temple complex dedicated to the cleansing of the High Priestess followers. The vertiginous hypostyle hall was believed to hold the weight of the heavens. Stolen from the memories of the plague, the temple was planted in the howling red forest, whose winds eroded its smooth edges. It now stands as a beacon of fear, visible from all cardinal points. Thank you all for listening. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed this lore reading and share it with your friends. Don't forget to comment down below about your favorite killer or survivor lore. We'll cover more lore as it releases chapter by chapter. I'll see you all next time, and as always, good game.